He left me hours before our wedding. No call. No explanation. Just vanished, to be with his ex at the hospital. So I did the unthinkable. I married his billionaire rival instead. And while he begged for a second chance, I left him with nothing but regret. The silk robe hugged my waist like a second skin. I should have been in my wedding dress by now. Instead, I was sitting on a velvet stool in a dressing room at the Crown Regency Hotel, staring at a text that hadn't been answered for over an hour. Me, running late. Delivered. Not read. I sent it at 10:17 a.m. It was now 11:41. My phone sat on the counter, screen black and silent. Still nothing. Harper asked from the corner where she was angrily pacing in heels. Cass, this isn't just fashionably late anymore. This is missing groom territory. I inhaled deeply and tried to stay calm. My hands trembled slightly as the makeup artist dusted highlighter over my cheekbones. He said he'd be here by 10. Maybe he's stuck in traffic or... Don't, Harper snapped. Do not make excuses for him. I've called his best man, his mom, even his driver. No one knows where he is. My stomach twisted. I reached for my phone again. Still nothing. My wedding was scheduled to start in less than an hour. The guests were arriving. The string quartet had begun playing outside the ballroom. The press was already whispering about the absence of the groom. And Michael Whitmore? Vanished. I forced a breath. Call the hotel security. Ask if he's been seen entering or leaving since last night. I already did, Harper said. Apparently he left the suite at 7 this morning. Alone. On foot. I stared at her. On foot. Where the hell would he go in a tux before dawn? That's when I saw it. A new Instagram notification slid across my screen. At Avalila tagged at Michael.Whitmore in a post. I tapped it before I could stop myself. The screen filled with a picture of Ava Layla, model, influencer, and unfortunately the woman Michael used to swear was just a friend. She was in a hospital gown, smiling gently from a white bed. Her makeup was soft and minimal, and she held a tiny bouquet of white peonies. But I wasn't looking at her. I was looking at him, Michael, sitting beside her on the hospital bed. Holding her hand. Wearing the same white gold watch I had gifted him last month. Caption read. Thank you for being here through it all. I'm so lucky. Blackheart # minor procedure # major love. I didn't feel the phone slip from my hands. I didn't even hear it clatter onto the counter. Everything else just went quiet. Harper's voice pierced the silence. Cass, what is it? I didn't answer. I just turned the screen toward her. She grabbed it. Read it. Went still. No, she whispered. No. No way. But there was. Michael, my fiancé, was in a hospital. Not because someone in his family had collapsed or because he had an emergency. He was there voluntarily. Holding hands with Ava. While I sat here in full bridal prep, fielding questions and press and panic, he was out there playing the part of doting lover. He wasn't late. He left. Okay, Harper said, the calm before a hurricane. I'm going to burn his face off. Maybe both their faces. Don't, I said, my voice barely audible. Cassidy. He ditched his own wedding to hold her hand in a hospital bed. Do you know how psychotic that is? I know. Everyone's here. The venue is packed. The reporters are drooling. Your dad's preparing a toast. I know. She stared at me. So what are we going to do? I stood up slowly. My reflection looked back at me. Lips perfectly glossed, hair in soft waves, gown hanging nearby like a ghost of what this day should have been. I smiled. And for the first time all morning it wasn't forced. We're not canceling anything. Harper blinked. What? I'm still getting married. Her jaw dropped. Cass, have you finally lost it? Who are you marrying? Yourself. No, I said. I reached for my phone. Someone better. I scrolled to the name I'd buried over a year ago. Julian Hart. The man Michael hated with every fiber of his being. His former business partner turned direct competitor. The man who once looked at me across a conference table and said, if I'd met you first, he wouldn't stand a chance. I hadn't spoken to Julian since the fallout. But that didn't mean he was gone. I tapped his name. Typed the message. I'm still getting married today. But the groom changed. You in. 3 dots appeared. Then. Give me 30 minutes. 35 minutes later. Julian walked through the hotel's private entrance in a black tux that looked hand-sewn to his frame. The chaos around me dimmed. The staff, the florists, the stylists, everyone paused and turned. Because Julian Hart didn't walk into rooms. He took them. He glanced at Harper, then at me, his lips tilting into that unfairly perfect smirk. So, trade-up day. Absolutely. Do I get to kiss the bride or punch the ex first? Harper choked. I think I love him. We made the switch in under an hour. I ordered every sign that said Whitmore to be ripped down. Every floral arrangement meant for the old initials. Trashed. Harper sent back the gifts from Michael's family with a refund note that simply read "Return to sender, bride upgraded." Julian walked me down the aisle like he'd always belonged there. The guests whispered, then clapped. The press called it the most daring wedding twist of the decade. And as I slipped the ring on Julian's finger, I knew one thing with crystal clarity. Michael didn't deserve to stand beside me. But Julian, he'd earned the right in 30 minutes flat. I now pronounce you husband and wife. There was a half-second of stunned silence before the applause erupted like thunder through the ballroom. Flashes from press cameras exploded around us. Guests clapped hesitantly at first and then more confidently, as if they were all silently agreeing to pretend this was the plan all along. It wasn't. But it felt like it should have been. Julian turned to me with a smile that could disarm missiles. Well, Mrs. Hart, how does it feel? I didn't hesitate. Like poetic justice. Then he leaned in and kissed me, gently, confidently, and just long enough for the front page of every gossip site to catch the exact moment my ex-fiancé was officially replaced. There was a visible gasp from one of Michael's distant cousins in the third row. I didn't care. He didn't show up. He left me with nothing but a guest list, an unpaid florist bill, and an Instagram post I'd never forget. So I gave the world a show instead. 1 hour earlier. The ballroom was full. Harper had done the impossible. She'd managed to delay the ceremony by 45 minutes without setting off alarm bells. My mother was blissfully unaware of the drama, sipping champagne and telling everyone I was having a moment to collect myself. Technically not a lie. Backstage, Julian adjusted his cufflinks like he had planned to be the groom from the beginning. He didn't ask questions. Didn't pry. Just nodded at instructions, met the planners, and smoothed his jacket. You nervous? He asked me as I stood in front of the mirror again, this time in the actual gown. No. Liar. I turned to face him. You. He grinned. Terrified. But in a fun way. My lips quirked. Then the ceremony music started. Oh. The reception was a blur of champagne and curious glances. Every 5 seconds someone whispered behind a sequined sleeve or subtly checked their phone. By the time dessert was served, the internet had caught up. Hashtag Cassidy Blake wedding. Hashtag runaway groom replaced. Hashtag Julian Hart did W. Harper sat beside me at the main table, scrolling furiously. He hasn't posted anything yet, she said between bites of creme brulee. He won't. He's probably too busy yelling at Ava for tagging him. I sipped my champagne and tilted my head. Do you think he thought I wouldn't find out? Oh, he knew you would. He just didn't think you'd do anything about it. That's always been Michael's blind spot. He thinks silence equals submission. I hummed. Well, surprise. Julian returned to the table with 2 glasses of champagne. To surviving a wedding on 20 minutes' notice. Harper raised hers. To humiliating an emotionally constipated man-child in front of the entire city. Julian clinked his glass against mine. To second choices becoming first class. Later that evening, just as the live band started playing a Frank Sinatra cover, my phone buzzed. It was a direct message. From Michael. Michael, why didn't you tell me you were still going through with it? Michael, I was going to come back. Michael, please don't post anything. I showed Harper. She let out a bitter laugh. Oh, now he wants privacy? Reply. I asked. She snatched my phone and typed without asking. Harper as me, don't worry. You're still part of the story. Just not in the role you expected. Julian and I shared our first dance. He didn't pull me close right away. Instead, he held my hand loosely and whispered, Are you sure you want me here? I didn't want you here. He blinked. I wanted a man who wouldn't humiliate me. Who wouldn't shrink when faced with hard choices. A man who doesn't abandon his future for a woman with better lighting. Julian's jaw twitched just slightly. And now? He asked softly. Now I want to finish this dance. He pulled me in then, firm but never forceful. The ballroom faded. The noise dulled. The strings swelled. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't standing in Michael's shadow. I was standing beside someone who chose me in a heartbeat. And that made all the difference. Meanwhile, Michael sat on the edge of Ava's hospital bed, jaw clenched, phone shaking in his hand. The comments under Ava's post had turned. This you? During Cassidy's wedding? Hashtag Mistress Energy. He left a Blake for a Layla? He's got brainworms. Ava pouted, flipping through her own DMs. I'm losing followers. Michael ran a hand through his hair. We'll fix this. Just delete the post. I can't. I already got reposted by TMZ. Then a new video surfaced. Our kiss at the altar. It went viral in less than 10 minutes. Ava's face turned red. They're calling him the upgraded groom. Michael stood up abruptly. He stormed out of the hospital room without saying a word. Back at the venue, Julian leaned down just before the final toast of the night. I never asked, was this revenge? Or closure? I thought about it. About the silence of the dressing room. About the sound of betrayal in the form of a caption. About the way the world seemed to tilt just slightly when I chose not to crumble. And I said, both. By the time I woke up the next morning, our wedding was already front-page news in 5 national outlets. The headlines were brutal. Runaway groom replaced. Cassidy Blake weds rival in stunning turnaround. Michael Whitmore ghosts his own wedding for mistress in hospital. Bride marries his business enemy. Julian Hart steals the spotlight and the bride. I didn't even need to check my notifications. Harper had already made a compilation of the top 20 most unhinged comments for me over breakfast. Julian, sipping espresso on the opposite end of my marble kitchen island, scrolled casually through a news feed like he wasn't the centerpiece of a nationwide media circus. This one's good, he said, holding up his phone. Julian Hart just did more for gender equality than the entire board of Blake and Whitmore ever did. I snorted into my coffee. Glad to see your fan club's thriving. I'm just happy to be part of your redemption arc. Oh please. You're the plot twist. I'm the whole story. He raised his mug in mock salute. To plot twists. We clinked cups. By noon, Harper had called an emergency PR strategy session at her office. You've got 2 options, she said, tossing a glossy folder in front of me. Let the media keep spinning this like it's reality TV, or control the narrative ourselves. I flipped through the packet. Interviews, press opportunities, carefully curated statements. At the very end, a mock-up of a People magazine cover featuring Julian and me mid-kiss under the crystal chandelier. You want us to do a press conference? I want you to own what happened, she said, tapping the cover. You didn't get dumped. You didn't cry. You pivoted. You made power moves in a gown. The world is begging to know how. I hesitated. Isn't it a little attention-seeking? Julian leaned in from his seat across the table. Cassidy, you were humiliated publicly. You don't owe anyone silence. You get to choose what they remember. Let them remember this. Elsewhere. Michael slammed his laptop shut and let out a guttural groan. His phone vibrated again. Another rejection. Another cancelled speaking engagement. His inbox had turned toxic overnight. Clients pulling out. Partners postponing deals. Interns sending memes behind his back. He looked up at Ava, lounging in one of his oversized hoodies, chewing on the corner of her nail and scrolling through TikTok. Are you watching them? She didn't even look up. It's everywhere. You guys are basically a joke. Michael ran both hands through his hair. You shouldn't have tagged me. Why did you have to post that damn photo? He turned to him. Because I thought we were finally public. You said you were done hiding. I didn't say you could out me on our wedding day. Our wedding. He blinked. I meant. You meant your wedding. He stood, avoiding her stare. I have to fix this. How? He didn't have an answer. 2 days later, Julian and I walked into a media hall swarming with cameras, reporters, and more flashing lights than a movie premiere. Harper had arranged everything. Tasteful floral backdrop, perfectly timed entry music, even a custom slideshow looping shots of our ceremony with soft piano beneath. I wore an ivory sheath dress with pearl detailing. Julian wore navy. And when we stepped on stage hand in hand, the crowd surged forward like they were starving for every word. Julian spoke first, charming and cool. Sometimes life hands you chaos. Sometimes it hands you Cassidy Blake. I consider myself lucky to have received both on the same day. The room laughed. People melted. Then it was my turn. I won't sugarcoat it, I said. I was left. On my wedding day. I had every right to hide, to cancel, to fall apart. But instead I chose something else. I chose to move forward. With someone who showed up when it counted. A flurry of hands shot up. Cassidy, did you expect Julian to say yes? Was this wedding legally binding? Have you spoken to Michael Whitmore since? Julian cut in smoothly. We did not elope for drama. We filed the paperwork before dessert. And no, we're not accepting apology calls. More laughter. More applause. And just like that, the narrative flipped. The media wasn't interested in Michael's side anymore. They had a new power couple to fawn over. Rumors began circulating that his law firm had lost 2 major clients overnight. Anonymous tips flowed in about possible ethical violations related to Ava's social media endorsements. And then an email leak. Screenshots showed Michael had promised a conflict of interest cover-up to a client in exchange for silent partnership. It was enough to open a formal inquiry. No one knew who leaked it, but I had a hunch Julian did. He never confirmed. Just winked over breakfast and said, "Justice likes stilettos." That night, I stepped onto our penthouse balcony with a glass of wine in hand. The city glittered below, alive with headlines and flashing billboards. Julian joined me a moment later, slipping his hand into mine. "You know," he murmured, "this all started because your ex couldn't keep his lies off Instagram. Ironic, right?" I sipped my wine. "He always said I was the dramatic one." Julian turned, brushing my hair behind my ear. He didn't know what real drama looked like. But now, the whole world does. I smiled, slow and satisfied. Let them watch. Harper leaned over the table and tapped the mock-up again. "You didn't get dumped. You didn't cry. You pivoted. You made power moves in a gown. The world is begging to know how." Julian leaned back in the chair beside me, one brow raised. "So you want us to stand in front of a bunch of flashing lights and admit this wasn't the wedding we planned?" "I want you to stand there," Harper said, "and make it look like this was the plan all along." I stared at the photo. Me in my gown. Julian in his tux. The perfect replacement couple. Power, beauty, and scandal. "I'll do it," I said finally. Julian turned toward me. "You're sure?" I looked him dead in the eye. Michael played me in public. I'm not going to heal in private. The press conference, 2 days later. Every major outlet showed up. Fashion reporters. Business journalists. Gossip bloggers. Even a few feminist columnists eager to crown me the patron saint of self-respect. Harper booked the rooftop of a private art gallery overlooking the skyline. The press backdrop was a sleek black wall with silver serif letters. Cassidy Blake, Julian Hart. A new chapter. We walked out hand in hand and the flashes began instantly. Julian was calm. Of course he was. He'd been doing boardroom takeovers and hostile negotiations since 25. This was just another form of performance. But me? I'd never felt eyes on me like this before. Every question came fast and sharp. "Cassidy, did you know about Michael's affair before the wedding? Is your marriage to Julian legal? Was this a publicity stunt? Julian, was this revenge?" Julian squeezed my hand once and stepped forward. "No," he said, voice even and clear. "This wasn't a stunt. It was an opportunity." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Cassidy made a decision, one that most people wouldn't have the courage to make under pressure. I was honored to stand beside her. "And the timing?" one reporter challenged. "He abandoned her hours before the ceremony. How do you fall in love in minutes?" "We didn't," I said, stepping up beside Julian. Everyone turned their cameras toward me. "We've known each other for years. Julian and I go way back, before Michael and I even got serious. This wasn't spontaneous. It was instinct. When someone walks away from you, it tells you everything. When someone shows up for you, that tells you even more." A murmur of approval spread across the crowd. "Were you in love with Julian before the wedding?" someone asked. Julian smirked. She's smarter than that. The crowd laughed again. Elsewhere. Michael watched the live stream from the back seat of a blacked-out SUV. Ava sat beside him, nervously biting her acrylic nails. "They're making jokes," she whispered. "They're making this funny. You're the one who looks pathetic." "Turn it off," he snapped. But it was too late. The public adored it. Cassidy wasn't a tragic jilted bride. She was a composed, steel-spined strategist with a diamond ring and a hotter husband. Julian Hart had gone from scandalized rival to America's favorite rebound fantasy. And Michael? He was a meme. When you skip your wedding and lose both women in the same week. Michael Whitmore, the case study in fumbling $1 billion bag. That evening, back at the penthouse, Julian poured me a glass of wine and set it beside the clawfoot tub. I'd barely sat down when he joined me, fully clothed, sitting on the floor beside the tub like it was a casual Tuesday. "No regrets?" he asked. "Not a single one." He tilted his head. "Not even marrying me?" I smiled. "Jury's still out." He gave a mock gasp. "Harsh." I sipped the wine and sighed. "I do feel like I got the better end of the deal." "You did." I looked at him. He wasn't teasing. "I'll make sure you never have to clean up someone else's mess again," he said quietly. "You deserve better than being second to anyone." I didn't reply. I just reached out and took his hand under the bubbles. 3 days after the press conference I got flowers. Not from Julian. From Michael. A massive bouquet of white lilies, peonies and orchids, so large the hotel staff needed help getting it through the door. No note. No card. Just a QR code taped to one of the stems. Harper, who happened to be in my suite when they arrived, narrowed her eyes like the stems had personally insulted her. "This has Michael written all over it." I scanned the code. A link opened. It led to a video. A shaky, obviously rushed recording of Michael standing in front of some glossy marble backdrop with a forced smile and fake vulnerability in his voice. "Cassidy, I know I made a mistake. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want to make things right. The wedding, Ava, everything. I wasn't thinking clearly." He sighed dramatically. "You're the one I wanted to marry. You always were. I didn't realize what I had until I saw you walk down the aisle with him." Harper leaned over my shoulder, unimpressed. "Oh please." He didn't realize what he had until he realized the media was calling Julian your upgrade. "If you're willing to talk, I'll be waiting." "Always." The video ended. Harper blinked. "He sent you a link to his apology? What is this, a loyalty program?" I didn't respond. Instead I turned to my assistant. "Call the florist. Donate the entire arrangement to the nearest hospital. Preferably the one Ava was in. They'll need a reminder of who actually sends flowers." Later that day, Hart Industries HQ. Julian was in the middle of a strategy call when I walked into his office. He was wearing that navy shirt that made his eyes look even colder, his sleeves rolled to the elbows and his glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. He looked up, noticed my expression and covered the phone's speaker. "Bad news or entertaining nonsense?" "Both," I said, dropping onto the velvet chair across from him. "Michael sent me a video apology. QR code and everything." Julian arched an eyebrow. "Innovative. Mildly pathetic." "He wants to talk." Julian removed his glasses and set them on the table. "Do you want to?" I shook my head. "No. But I want him to try." He smiled faintly. "Let him think there's still a door open. It's more satisfying when you slam it in their face." 2 days later, the gala. It was a charity event for a literacy initiative, a cause Julian supported and one I had recently joined as a board member. Everyone who mattered in business and law was in the room, including Michael. He showed up uninvited. Not with Ava, who according to the internet had retreated from social media to focus on her healing journey, but with a PR handler and a new, desperate gleam in his eyes. He spotted us across the room, and for a brief moment I saw hope flicker in his expression. Julian caught it too. "Brace yourself," he muttered under his breath. Sure enough, Michael made a beeline toward us as soon as the cameras weren't looking. "Cassidy," he said smoothly with the fake calm of someone who rehearsed in the mirror. "You look incredible." I glanced at Julian. Did I suddenly go deaf? Michael tried a smile. "Look, I'm not here to make a scene. I need to explain. Ava wasn't supposed to post that. She had surgery. I was just trying to." To what? I cut in. Play hero for someone you were cheating on me with? Julian said nothing. He didn't need to. He just stood close enough for Michael to notice the way his hand rested against my back. Michael tried again. I panicked, okay? I didn't know she was going to tag me. I didn't think the post would go viral. So, I said flatly, you didn't think. That's the part we agree on. Michael's jaw clenched. I know I hurt you. But I can fix this. Blake and Whitmore doesn't have to end. I know your dad backed out after the wedding, but if you and I team up... Let me stop you right there, Julian interrupted, finally speaking. His voice was calm, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable. You don't get to talk business with my wife. Michael turned to him. You stole her. You had this planned. Julian smiled, slow and lethal. You left. I arrived. That's not strategy, it's natural selection. The fury in Michael's eyes simmered like a boiling pot. You don't get to win this, he hissed under his breath. You're not better than me. No, Julian said. I just didn't cheat. That night, my inbox pinged again. This time it wasn't an apology video. It was a cease and desist letter. From Michael's lawyer. Accusing me of intentionally defaming his professional reputation through strategic public framing. I forwarded it to Julian's team without a second thought. Julian called me 10 minutes later. Want to counter? Oh, I want to bury him. Good, he said. Because I already drafted a response. 2 days later, the story leaked to the media. Michael Whitmore attempted to sue his ex-fiancée for damaging his reputation after she publicly moved on. Public reaction? The guy who ran off to play nurse for his side chick is now trying to sue his own victim? Cassidy Blake didn't ruin you, Michael. You did that all on your own. Someone take this man's Wi-Fi. The suit was dropped within 24 hours. But the damage to Michael's name? Permanent. Endorsements gone. Clients dropped. His father's legacy firm? Teetering. Rumor had it the board was considering asking him to step down. Back in the penthouse. Julian stepped out of the bathroom, a towel around his neck, water still clinging to his collarbone. He handed me a folder with a red tab. What's this? Your victory. Inside was the official board memo. Blake and Whitmore's largest investor, Julian's subsidiary, had officially pulled out. Effective immediately. Michael's done, he said simply. I stared at him, then the document. You did this quietly? Revenge is better when they can't trace the bullet. I smiled, a slow satisfaction curling in my chest. Julian. Thank you, for showing up. He walked over, leaned down and kissed the top of my head. Always. Julian's birthday wasn't the kind of event you planned. It was the kind that simply happened. Luxury by accident, exclusivity by default. I had made a private appointment at Montclair and Company, the most prestigious jewelry boutique in the city. The type of place where they served champagne with your receipt and had private elevators for preferred clientele. We weren't there to flaunt. But I wasn't exactly against it either. You sure you want jewelry? I asked, running my fingers along a velvet case. I could have arranged a dinner with half the board of Heart Global to serenade you. Julian chuckled. This is better. Fewer boring speeches, more sparkle. The sales associate brought over a tray of sleek, masculine watches and platinum cufflinks. As she set them down, I glanced at my phone. Harper had texted 3 times. Michael and Ava spotted in Midtown. She's rebranding again, says they're starting fresh. Also, she's wearing what looks like your earrings. I rolled my eyes and was about to reply when the bell above the boutique's door chimed. And just like that, they walked in. Michael, Ava. And enough awkward tension to freeze the entire Upper East Side. For a moment no one spoke. Ava wore a powder blue shift dress that matched the tone of her expression, fake sweet with a bitter aftertaste. Her arm was looped through Michael's as she leaned in close, clearly putting on a show. Michael's eyes landed on Julian's hand, resting lightly on my back. I didn't flinch. I smiled. Julian, I said just loud enough for them to hear. You have to try this on. The sapphire inlay matches your eyes. Julian, ever the actor, played along flawlessly. Only if I get to see that smile again when I wear it. Michael stiffened. Ava's fake giggle broke the silence. Cassidy, you always did have excellent taste, especially when it came to buying gifts for other people. I turned slowly. And you always did have a knack for turning other women's lives into your personal Pinterest board. The sales associate, clearly sensing drama worth staying for, smiled politely and asked, "Would you like assistance with your selection?" Ava stepped forward, pointing at a glass case. "We'd like to see that jadeite bracelet." Michael nodded, trying to regain composure. "It's for Ava's birthday next week." I leaned toward Julian. "Would be a shame if his card doesn't go through," I murmured. Julian grinned. "I'd give it 30 seconds. The bracelet was brought out with reverence. Pure green jadeite with gold accents. Price tag? $96,000. I watched with mild amusement as Michael's pupils dilated slightly when he saw it. "Do you want to try it on, babe?" he asked, handing it to Ava. Ava slipped it on dramatically. "It's perfect. This is exactly the kind of piece that says, 'I've moved on.'" Julian leaned down and whispered in my ear, "You think she knows she's wearing debt?" I smirked. Michael turned to the associate. "We'll take it." He handed over a black card. The associate politely stepped away to process it. And then, "Sir, I'm sorry. This card didn't go through." Michael blinked. "Try again." She did. Declined. He frowned and pulled out another one. "Apologies, sir. This one was declined as well." Ava's smile faltered. "One more card." This time Michael's jaw tightened as he handed it over like he was defusing a bomb. Declined. Completely and catastrophically. Julian casually reached over and tapped the sapphire watch I had picked for him. "We'll take this," he said smoothly. "Also wrap the matching cufflinks. It's a gift from my wife." The associate beamed and took his card, which cleared instantly. As she bagged the items, Ava stood frozen, bracelet still on her wrist like a cursed relic. Michael's ears turned red. "Will it come back?" "Oh, I'm sure," I said sweetly. "The pawn shop's just around the corner." Outside the store, Harper was waiting in our car. She popped her head out the window the moment we stepped in. "Tell me it happened." I handed her the bag with the receipt and winked. "He tried. He failed." I sparkled. Harper cackled. "That's going on a t-shirt." Julian glanced at me as we pulled away. "You're scarily good at staying calm." "Not calm," I said. "Just evolved." Later that evening. Hart Penthouse. Julian set the gift box on the coffee table and poured us each a glass of wine. "You know," he said, "I don't usually celebrate birthdays. That's because most people throw parties. I throw scenes." He laughed. "You made today perfect. You were a very well-behaved fake husband." His eyes darkened slightly. "Only fake." I took a sip of my wine, lips curving. "What would you prefer?" He set his glass down and leaned in slowly. "Something a little more permanent." I tilted my head. "Are you proposing again?" Julian grinned. "Not yet. But I'm putting in the work." My heart beat a little faster than I liked. Because the truth was he was putting in the work. Every day. Every gesture. Every moment he reminded me what real partnership looked like. Michael? He had lost more than a fiancé. He had lost his place in the story. The headline hit the business world like a slap across the face. Whitmore and Company. Under internal review amidst investor exodus. I nearly spilled my coffee. The article was brutal, clearly fed by someone with intimate knowledge of the firm's weak points. Unconfirmed accusations, hints at mismanaged client funds, and insider tips pointing to Michael's failed attempt to cover personal debts using firm resources. Harper sent me a voice note right after the news dropped. "You didn't even have to lift a finger. I'm so proud of you, my little chaos queen." Julian, however, said nothing. But when I walked into his home office that morning, I noticed something. A folder marked confidential sat on the edge of his desk with a sticky note that read, "For your eyes only. Consider it closure." Inside, every document tying Michael's unraveling back to the choices he'd made since the day he left me in the dressing room. Whitmore and Company had relied heavily on a single investor after my father withdrew his backing. When that investor began pulling support, quietly, systematically, it created a slow bleed. Not enough to cause panic, just enough to destabilize operations. Then came the anonymous complaint to the regulatory board, followed by 2 high-profile clients terminating their contracts within the same week. And now a full-blown internal audit. All of it tied back to Julian. I closed the folder and stared out the penthouse window. I had married a man who didn't believe in second chances. He believed in leverage. Meanwhile, Whitmore and Company. Headquarters. Michael stood in front of the boardroom's glass wall, trying to hide the sweat under his collar. Every senior partner was there. Every one of them staring at him like he was a mistake they didn't want to admit to. The managing partner, a man who had once toasted Michael's promotion, cleared his throat. "We've been contacted by the Ethics Review Committee," he said. "They're launching a preliminary investigation." Michael tried to keep his voice level. "On what grounds?" "Allegations of misusing company funds for personal expenses. Irregular billing. Failure to disclose financial ties with client Ava Layla's promotional ventures." Ava. Of course. She dragged him into her influencer drama and now it was all coming back like a legal boomerang. "Do you have a statement?" one of the partners asked coldly. Michael opened his mouth and closed it again, because no matter what he said he looked guilty now. Back at the penthouse. Julian walked in that night, loosening his tie, looking like he'd just wrapped a silent war and won. "He's circling the drain," I said, setting a glass of bourbon in front of him. He raised an eyebrow. "Do you feel anything? Guilt? Sympathy?" I thought about it. The dressing room. The hours of silence. The pain I swallowed while sitting in full makeup, watching Ava's hospital selfie with my fiancé's hand in the frame. "No," I said. "Just relief." Julian nodded once. "He'll be suspended within the week. The firm might survive." "He won't." "Will you push further?" He considered it. "Not unless you want me to." I looked up at him. "What if I did?" His expression was unreadable. "Then I'll ruin him completely." The next morning Michael called. Not me, my assistant. She patched him through, wide-eyed and holding a hand over the speaker like she was handling a bomb. "He wants to meet," she whispered. "Says he has a proposal." Harper nearly fell off her chair from laughing when I told her. "Let me guess, he wants a truce? A partnership? A pity date?" Julian, when I told him, just said, "Take the meeting." "Really?" He nodded. Sometimes watching them beg in person is good for the soul. Michael chose a hotel lounge uptown. Fancy, discreet, the kind of place people used to associate with his success. He stood when I walked in. His suit was sharp but his eyes were tired. "Cassidy." I sat. Said nothing. He folded his hands on the table. "I want to apologize." I raised an eyebrow. "For everything," he added quickly. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I miss working with you. The firm, without you, without your father's backing, we're in trouble. You always had the vision. The polish. The connections. You're asking me to save you." He swallowed. "I'm offering to bring you back. Equity. Creative control. We can rebrand. You're the face of modern law. Julian's busy running his empire. You could run this." I stared at him for a long second. Then I leaned forward and said, "Michael, I didn't walk away from a wedding to crawl back into a coffin." His eyes widened. "You buried yourself. You chose Ava. You chose public humiliation over loyalty. I'm not coming back to save you. I'm building something so far above you, you won't even be able to see it." He tried to interrupt. I stood. "You don't get to ask anything of me. You lost the firm the second you left me in that dressing room." I turned to walk away, then stopped. "Oh, and Michael?" He looked up. "Next time you want to propose a business merger, maybe don't start by ghosting the person you're pitching to." That night, Julian was reading when I returned. He looked up the second I closed the door. "Well," he begged. He smiled. "Did you enjoy it?" I did. He set the book down. "And now?" I walked to him slowly, hands curling around his tie. "Now I want to build something better. Stronger. Our own firm." Julian's eyes darkened. "You're serious?" "As a signed contract." He pulled me close, lips brushing mine. "Then let's make Whitmore irrelevant." The moment the press release went out, the city stopped talking about the scandal and started talking about the shift in power. Blakehart Legal Group launches. The power couple reinventing modern law. From betrayal to boardroom. How Cassidy Blake turned her wedding day disaster into a legal empire. I read the headlines from Julian's penthouse office. Legs crossed on the couch, champagne flute in hand. Harper called within minutes. "Cass. Baby. You broke the internet. The TikToks are calling you a capitalist Cinderella." Someone even made a meme of Michael's empty chair at the altar turning into a swivel seat in an unemployment office. "Send me that one," I said, smiling into my glass. Sent. Also, just FYI, Michael and Ava unfollowed each other on Instagram. My eyebrows lifted. Already? Apparently he's crashing at a friend's place in Brooklyn. Ava was last seen at a resort in Tulum. Alone. Tragic, I said, already scrolling through the firm's newly launched website on my iPad. Beautifully tragic, Harper agreed. God, I love being on the winning team. The launch. We held a private celebration at the Orleans, a rooftop venue draped in white orchids, golden lights and crystal glasses that clinked like punctuation to every whisper of admiration. Julian stood beside me in a black-on-black tux, his hand resting on the small of my back like he'd claimed me twice over. Once in business, once in marriage. I can't believe this is real, I said, scanning the crowd. Venture capitalists. Political advisors. Theos. All people who once looked past me. Not anymore. It's real, Julian murmured. And it's only the beginning. He raised his glass. The room quieted. To reinvention, he said smoothly, every syllable dripping with quiet triumph. To the woman who didn't just survive being left at the altar. She made it the foundation of a legacy. Everyone clapped. I didn't blush. I smiled and let them see the steel beneath the gloss. Elsewhere. Michael watched it unfold from a cheap screen in a second-hand suit. The event was live-streamed. Of course it was. Cassidy always knew how to make a moment cinematic. Ava hadn't returned his calls in days. Her last post was a thinly veiled dig captioned. "Sometimes you have to leave behind what weighs you down. Victory hand palm tree #solo healing." The comments were brutal. "So, the bracelet didn't make it through customs? Tell Michael we said hi from the unemployment line. Cassidy was the prize, babe. You brought a coupon to a diamond store." He tossed his phone across the room. It didn't break. Unfortunately. Weeks later, Hart and Blake's first client victory. Our first high-profile win came fast. A public trade dispute involving a tech company that had been trying to negotiate a hostile acquisition. Julian handled the corporate strategy. I led negotiations with their executive team. The CEO, a woman twice my age with 3 times my net worth, stood after the deal was finalized, shook my hand and said, "You're going to run this city someday." "I'm not waiting for someday," I said, smiling. "I already started." Back at the penthouse. Julian and I sat on the balcony watching the skyline glow beneath a full moon. "I was thinking," he said, passing me a glass of wine, "about rebranding Hart Global into Hart and Blake Worldwide." I froze. "Are you serious?" He turned toward me. "I want our names side by side on everything. Not because of PR. Because it's us. We built this together." I stared at him for a long moment. Not long ago I was sobbing alone in a dressing room while my world fell apart. Now I was sipping wine beside a man who saw my strength before I even recognized it myself. I nodded. "Let's do it." Then came the invitation. 2 days later I received a cream-colored envelope. Embossed. Fancy. The return address? Whitmore and Company. I opened it slowly. Inside was a formal invitation to a restructuring reception, celebrating the firm's new managing partners. The boldest part? It was being hosted in the same venue where my wedding was supposed to take place. Harper saw it first. "Oh, hell no." I handed it to Julian. He read it once, then calmly folded it and set it on the table. "Well," he said, "we can't not go." I arched an eyebrow. "You want to crash their apology tour?" "I want them to see what they lost." I wore the dress I'd originally chosen for my wedding reception. A floor-length midnight blue satin with a plunging back, delicate crystal straps, and a slit so sharp it could cut through glass. I had ordered it 8 months ago. Never worn it. Till now. Julian stood behind me in the mirror, adjusting his cufflinks. "You look like revenge," he said simply. "That's the idea," I replied. The Whitmore and Company restructuring reception. It was held in the Montclair Ballroom. Is that ballroom? The same venue where I was supposed to walk down the aisle. The same one where I had once imagined dancing with Michael under a chandelier, surrounded by champagne and applause. Tonight the chandeliers sparkled just as brightly, but they weren't lighting my downfall. They were illuminating his. As Julian and I arrived, the room stirred. People turned. Whispers rippled like silk in the air. Is that her? That's Julian Hart. Oh my God, they actually came. She looks better than ever. Michael was across the room. He noticed us the second we entered. His eyes widened. For a split second I saw something flash behind them. Regret, panic, maybe even longing. Too late. We made our way to the bar. The bartender didn't even blink. Miss Blake. Mr. Hart. Welcome. I'll take champagne, I said, taking the glass with a smile as I turned to scan the room. Ava wasn't there. Either she didn't want to face the crowd, or she no longer had a reason to stand beside him. Julian leaned in. Should we greet the host? I smirked. Why not? The confrontation. Michael intercepted us halfway across the room. Cassidy, he said, trying for a smile. Julian. Michael, Julian replied, voice smooth as silk. Quite a party. Love what you've done with the place, especially the desperation in the air. Michael forced a laugh. Funny. I didn't expect you two to come. I sipped my drink. And miss your swan song? His smile faltered. You really had to make this about you, he said, voice low. You already won, Cassidy. You've got the firm, the headlines, the man. Wasn't that enough? No, I said calmly. It wasn't about winning. It was about never letting you rewrite the ending. Michael's jaw clenched. You think I'm finished? You think this is it? Julian stepped forward, his presence instantly heavier. It's not what we think, Michael. It's what your board thinks. Your clients. Your investors. I leaned in slightly. And what Ava thinks, though I doubt she's thinking much at all from her villa in Bali. His eyes burned. You enjoy this, don't you? No, I said with a slow smile. But I earned it. The collapse. An hour later it began. One of the partners, an older man with a rigid tie and tighter smile, stepped onto the stage and tapped the mic. Thank you all for being here. We're grateful to have such a distinguished gathering of peers and press, he said with a pointed glance toward the cameras. Tonight we formally announce a new phase for Whitmore and Company. Due to internal restructuring and changes in executive leadership, Michael Whitmore will no longer serve as managing partner. The room went silent. Gasps. Murmurs. I didn't blink. Michael stood in the corner, white-knuckling his glass. This decision is effective immediately, the speaker continued. The firm is entering a transition period, and we thank Mr. Whitmore for his past service. Past service. He'd been removed. Publicly. Brutally. Irrevocably. I turned to Julian. Did you know this was happening tonight? No, he murmured. But I'm very, very happy to be here. After the speech, Michael vanished into the crowd. I spotted him ducking into a hallway near the back. Julian caught my gaze. Want to leave it there? I thought about it. No. I want closure. I followed. I found him leaning against a table, tie loosened, shoulders slumped. He looked up as I approached. Here to gloat. No. He scoffed. Then what? I came to say thank you. He blinked. What? Thank you for leaving me. For disappearing on the day we were supposed to get married. For choosing someone else. He stared silent. If you'd gone through with the wedding, I might have spent my whole life wondering what I was settling for. He swallowed hard. Cassidy. I'm not angry anymore. Not even disappointed. I just don't care. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. I smiled. That's real power, Michael. You don't get to hurt me anymore. Then I turned and walked away. Back at the ballroom. Julian held out my coat as I returned, helping me slip it on with a warm, grounding hand on my shoulder. All good, he asked. Perfect, I said. As we left the building, my old wedding venue, I didn't look back. Michael had ruined that day. But I had rewritten the story. And this time it ended with me walking out on him. 3 months later we returned to Montclair. Not for revenge, not for damage control. This time it was just a jewelry fitting. Private. Quiet. Ours. Julian held my hand as we walked into the private suite at the back of the boutique, where the walls were lined with velvet, and the lighting was deliberately set to make diamonds dance. You know, I said as we sat, the last time I walked into a jewelry store with a man, he couldn't get his card to clear. Julian smirked. I don't have that problem. I laughed softly and brushed my thumb along his knuckles. That's not what I meant. I know, he said, his gaze steady. But you also didn't have this problem. He pulled a small box from his coat pocket and placed it on the table between us. No fanfare. No stage. Just a simple black box and the man who had stood beside me when the world watched. I blinked. Julian. I know we got married in chaos. In retaliation. In public. I swallowed. But this time, Cassidy Blake, I want to ask you something for real. No cameras. No journalists. No social media trending tags. He opened the box. Inside sat the most stunning ring I'd ever seen. A solitaire emerald-cut diamond set in platinum, surrounded by a delicate halo of sapphires. It was timeless. Elegant. Fierce. Just like everything I had become. I don't want a power marriage, he said. I want our marriage. Will you do it again? This time by choice. I looked at him for a long time. And then I smiled. I never stopped choosing you. Later that evening, our balcony. The city shimmered below as we clinked glasses of wine together. It wasn't loud or extravagant. Just peaceful. Harper had already texted. You better send me a close-up of that ring before Vogue gets it. To which I replied. You'll get a seat at the real wedding this time. Julian leaned against the balcony rail, watching me the way he always did. Not like I was delicate, but like I was powerful and dangerous in his. Do you regret any of it? He asked. I didn't hesitate. No. Michael's betrayal had broken something. But in the ruins I found myself. I found my voice. My future. And him. Meanwhile, Michael sat in a worn office, flipping through old proposals, waiting on returned calls that never came. Ava had long since ghosted him, moved to LA for a brand deal he once promised her she'd never need. The firm he once led now ran without him. People used to whisper his name in admiration. Now they whispered it in warning. He opened his phone, instinctively checking Cassidy's profile. The first thing that appeared was a photo. Just her hand. A perfect ring on her finger. Caption. This time I chose the ring. And the man who never disappeared. The comments were brutal. Talk about an upgrade. The real power move is peace. Some women walk away. She built an empire. Michael locked his screen. He had lost. Not just a woman. Not just a firm. He had lost the chance to be a part of a story that changed everything. Back on the balcony. Julian reached for my hand and ran his thumb over the ring. You know what I think the best part is? What? You didn't just walk away. You walked up. I looked at him. At what? At the life you deserved all along. The second wedding wasn't in a ballroom. It wasn't photographed by the press. It wasn't live-streamed or trend-tracked or splashed across headlines. It was held on a sun-drenched hillside vineyard in Italy, overlooking golden vines, wildflowers swaying in the wind, and a small crowd of people who had loved us quietly, steadily from the beginning. Harper stood beside me in a pale blush gown, already crying before I even took my first step down the aisle. Julian waited beneath a vine-covered arch, not in a tux but in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled, smile real. This time no one left. No one disappeared. No one lied. This time I didn't walk toward a maybe. I walked toward forever. The vows. We wrote them ourselves. Julian's was brief, but not simple. I didn't plan for you, he said, voice thick. You were the plot twist I didn't see coming. But I'm grateful every day that life rewrote itself around you. Mine was slower. There was a time I thought love had to be earned through sacrifice. That I had to be quieter. Softer. More patient with people who gave me less than I deserved. I met Julian's gaze. But then you came, and showed me that the right person doesn't make you less. They meet you where you are, then rise with you. Later that night, Vineyard Villa. After the toasts, the dancing, and Harper drunkenly confessing to tipping off a gossip columnist months ago. You're welcome for the press bump, by the way. Julian and I stepped away from the noise. The stars above Tuscany were unapologetically bright. The vines swayed in the warm wind. And in the silence I finally exhaled. You know, Julian murmured as he pulled me against him, your name is officially above mine on the new Hart and Blake signage. I grinned. That's because Blake and Hart sounded like a real estate firm. He laughed. I let you have the top line and you let me keep you. Fair trade. We stood there for a moment longer. Husband and wife, partners in power and peace. No drama. No ghosts. Just us. Meanwhile, back in New York, Michael opened the newspaper on the subway, the soft rustling of the pages echoing louder than it should have. His eyes stopped on a society section blurb. Sources confirmed Julian Hart and Cassidy Blake exchanged vows in a private Italian ceremony. They looked like two people who won, not just in love but in life, one guest shared. There was no photo. No grand reveal. Just confirmation that the story had ended. And he wasn't part of it. He turned the page without reading further. Epilogue. 1 year later. Julian and I were hosting a private event in our new downtown headquarters. Sleek black walls, gold fixtures, and a rooftop garden overlooking the city we now shaped. Hart and Blake had already secured 3 of the year's top corporate litigation wins. We didn't throw parties to gloat. We threw them to mark new beginnings. As I stood beside my husband, fingers laced with his, I thought of everything that had led me here. The dress I never wore. The aisle I never walked. The man who thought he could leave and still return to applause. He didn't ruin me. He revealed me. And in that revelation I found everything I never thought I deserved. Peace, partnership, purpose. Cassidy, Julian said beside me, his voice soft but certain. If you had to do it all again, would you? I turned, smiling. In a heartbeat. Because the best revenge isn't rage. It's the life they'll never be invited to. The end.